Welcome to this episode of the Comedy Defect podcast. My name is Winter, I'm a comedian, and this is my show. Those who are new to the show, welcome. Those who are old to the show, welcome back, guys. Now, I hope you're keeping cool in this hot weather. I'm going to do a very short intro because I am absolutely roasting in the room I'm recording this, under duvets, under other things as well. So I hope you're doing all right for July and you're having nice barbecues and you are just kind of relaxing and getting ready for August, and hopefully you're going to go on holiday. And you can find this podcast. We're on Facebook. We're there. We have a page. You can go to Twitter. You can follow me at Winter Dominus. I'm also on Instagram at Winter Dominus as well. That's Winter, Dominus. Now, if you like this podcast enough and you feel like you want to donate, just go to Patreon, type in The Comedy Defect Podcast, or donate as little or as much as you feel this podcast is worth. And if you can't donate, that's okay. Just tell your friends about your favorite episode, or go to the podcast app and leave us a nice, honest review, because it tells people where we are and what we're up to. I'm not going to say any more because I'm absolutely sweltering as I'm recording this intro. So all I'm going to say is please enjoy this excellent conversation with Charmian Hughes, who's a brilliant comedian and absolutely lovely person, for episode 88. Enjoy. Charmian Hughes, thank you for spending the next hour with me on the Comedy Defect. How have you been? What have you been up to?
Well, I've been fine, thank you very much. I've been doing a few Zoom gigs.
Yeah.
I've done a bit of online public speaking teaching, which I did at the beginning. I've done some live gigs, and I've just been pottering around. We adopted a dog in July, so that's been really nice. Kept us outside.
I think, what kind of dog did you get?
He's a Labrador. He's quite middle-aged. He's a chocolate Labrador.
Oh, brilliant.
And he's been really sweet.
Has he got like the square nose or the long nose?
He's got a kind of square nose, and he's got a look of stupefaction. He's very sweet.
They're soppy as anything, aren't they? They're the best dog.
Absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, they're standard, aren't they, really? If you want a dog that just you can rely on and is always pleased to see you, Labrador. That's it. Easy going.
He's got quite fit. He was a bit tubby when he arrived, but he isn't anymore. I think he was snacking.
Oh yeah. He's like would you get him from the rescue centre?
No, I got him through I got him directly from his owner through actually another comedian who met the guy and heard his story, and he'd been really well looked after, but he just couldn't cope anymore with circumstances and all this kind of stuff that's happening now. He needed to rehome him, so it worked out quite well.
Oh well, that's it. He's in fighting form now by the sounds of it, and I mean, that's people. Loads of people this year have been getting dogs so they can actually just leave the house and do something, isn't it? Really,
they have, and the television is just kind of full of dog adoption programs, and there's a lot of dog theft going on as well, alarmingly. That because dogs go for, like, they used to go for like 800 quid, and apparently they're going for thousands of pounds because people are so lonely and fed up.
There's a market for everything, isn't there? Eh? There's always a time. Thousands. I mean, when I was a kid in Ireland, like, we get a dog for free from the local farmer. They go, as a Labrador or crossed with a collie / everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh God, they're now designer dogs, Labradollies. And...
Yeah. I saw Caucasian the other day, and I was like, this Indian family was walking this dog, and I was like, walking mine. I've got a Labrador and I've got a Husky. I was walking them past this big fluffy thing. And I asked the guy, I said, "What is that?" And he said, "Oh, it's a Caucasian." I thought that he was just trying to pull on my leg. And I was like,
"What is that? What does that stand for?"
It's a Russian dog that used in the prisons. And they're so big, they're bear killers sort of thing. They're like protect like the cattle, I guess, and they use them in the prisons for as guard dogs and protection and stuff.
Yeah.
But they're huge. They're such a weirdly, you get into these mad conversations with people who deliver takeaway to the door. There's one guy was delivering this irrelevant details coming. this chicken stuff that we got from the chicken roosters down the road, and we got this stuff anyway. And he was handing it over, and he was like, "Oh yeah, you got dogs?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I've got a Caucasian." I was like, "Well, okay." The other Asian guy wasn't pulling my leg about the dog being called a Caucasian, and he said that he just does the deliveries and stuff. We got talking for like about 5 minutes. he was saying that he does the deliveries to help out his brother who owns the shop, and his real job is he's like a scientist who works with like oncology specimens, and he uses the dog is so big and the bones are so dense for that dog that they can do they tests with him, and like he feeds him. I said to him, how do you feed that dog? It's huge. They're like at least like maybe 13, 14 stone of dog, they're huge. And he said, oh yeah, well, I mean, because of my work in like physio with bones and I'm a scientist and all this, that it pays for that, and they're part of the whole thing. I was like, wow, that's amazing. Don't want to not feed that dog though.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's incredible.
And so, have you been okay?
I've been all right, Charmian. I've just been kind of just doing more, trying to do something else and doing a few gigs here and there. But like I did a couple of live gigs, like as Zoom gigs, and I didn't feel it, to be honest. It was forced. It felt, and as I said to you before when I asked you to do the podcast, I said, I don't really like the video version. For me, it just seems all very forced and just kind of, we're having such a great time. We can't really actually have a proper interaction,
I've found that my Zoom gigs, I've addressed them that I sit in an armchair now, and it's like something from Tales of Mystery and Imagination, in that it's more like storytelling because you're only seen from the chest up. You can't move around very much. Yep.
That's right. So and it's working for you. Then you're enjoying them now. You've got found the kind of
okay.
The hook.
Now that I've tried not to replicate the stand-up experience,
yeah,
and I've got to do my Edinburgh show, which didn't go to Edinburgh. It went to New Zealand, where I was caught up in their lockdown. So that all kind of, I could do some gigs, but I couldn't do the rest of it. Got stuck a bit. But now I'm doing the show that missed out on one of their festivals at 7:00 in the morning to be beamed into a live theatre on a screen as part of the New Zealand Dunedin Festival in March.
That's great.
So it's going to be very weird.
Yeah, at 7 in the morning as well. Wow.
I'm working out the technology of it. I mean, I think that it's going to require a bit more than me sitting in a chair looking mysterious.
Yeah.
I need to run around a bit.
Are you going to use like PowerPoint as well, or what are you going to do?
I'm not sure. I'm going to liaise with them. At first, they thought it was just something we could do on a phone. I think that I kind of feel I want to build a little set, or even start it in my pajamas.
Yeah. And
kind of embrace the strangeness of the whole thing.
Those Zoom gigs, they feel like a whole movie that's gone on way too long. It's such a, like, just found this thing. It's such a weird thing, and to kind of try and keep your attention. I think
short and sweet. And when people book me for Zoom gigs and they say you could do 35 minutes, say no one wants to see someone doing 35 minutes.
Yeah, that's right.
Zoom. You want to see lots of different people doing about 15. That's it.
A selection for sure. You couldn't go to New Zealand because of the lockdown and everything.
No, I was.
You were in there.
New Zealand. Right. Yeah, it's the 4th time I've been, and right from the first mention of the mysterious virus, in January, I had a feeling about it. I had such a feeling about it that I wanted to change my flight provider because I was going through Hong Kong and I was saying, oh my God, Hong Kong is going to be so bad. It never occurred to me that the danger was not going to be Hong Kong, but the UK. So when I flew out, there were very few cases in the UK. And there was like one case, I think, in New Zealand, maybe not even one. 5 days in, the panic started, the pandemic was announced, and of course New Zealand, they shut down. And when they shut down, I mean, they shut down. They did it in stages. So that was even more nerve-wracking because you knew that you were like in phase 1 and it could go into phase 2. But when they locked down, you were given 2 days' notice that wherever you were at 5:00 in the afternoon of Ground Zero day, you had to stay there. You couldn't go. And I had a thing where the friends I normally stayed with, they had an elderly landlady, so I was meant to stay and she didn't want me to stay. She was scared. Yeah, and there was a moment when I thought I was going to be stuck, like for months, in the airport Ibis hotel, waiting for any flight out because all the flights cancelled, all the interim airports shut down. You have to fuel, obviously, when you go from New Zealand to anywhere because it's so far away. And eventually I was rescued by through Facebook, through a friend, just putting out an appeal, and a friend of a friend. She had like a kind of ranch thing in Auckland, and she had a wing where I could kind of be separate, because at the time we thought it was like the bubonic plague.
Of course, yeah.
It was everyone was so paranoid and frightened, and so I went there. But after like a day, we mellowed out a bit and relaxed a bit more, and it was a bit more normal. But thank God for her.
Oh wow, yeah, it sounds incredibly stressful.
I'm making it sound dramatic, Winter, but actually, I was able to fly home like 6 days later, but I didn't know that at the time.
No, you don't know how long it's going to last. You're right.
Because there was like a Facebook group or a Twitter group of Brits stuck in New Zealand, and I was part of that, and we did what the British do, which is complain and also kind of furnish a panic, add fire to the flames, or fuel even, so that someone would say, I managed to book a flight, and somebody else would say, it won't happen. And I got a bit like that.
Yeah,
that's it. Like, okay at the end.
People home. Trying to steal your hope every turn you take. Like, oh wow.
And it was like a creeping feeling, the realization of going from a bit, not a joke, but kind of being a bit winsome about the whole thing, to thinking, God, I could actually be stuck here forever. And like back home afterwards, people said, you're so lucky to have been trapped in New Zealand, must be so wonderful. And New Zealand is the most wonderful place, but anywhere is the same when you're stuck in a room. I was a bit worried, but
that's it, of course.
And then coming back to London, that was like right at the beginning of April, and it was like a moonscape, a ghost town. And and I did think, the bubonic plague is breathing down my neck, but I've calmed down quite a lot since then. Just got on with life really. That's it. Taking sensible precautions.
Yeah, that's it. I guess the usual, really, isn't it? Just don't kind of lick your hands after you've touched something outside.
Tried not to. I've tried not to.
It's really hard. It is hard. But licking windows and everything. But so your show you're going to do at 7:00 in the morning. What's that called?
Well, it's called She. And it was the show that I took to New Zealand that kind of wrote just before Christmas. And I don't know if you've ever seen a 1960s kind of rather trashy adventure film that was called She.
Right.
And it was taken from a Rider Haggard novel. It's rather inspired by, the Mummy or the mysterious ancient Egypt films. It's about a mysterious lost land in the desert, and it's ruled by an immortal queen who's played by Ursula Andress. And the film, the show rather, was kind of inspired by seeing that as a child and getting the wrong ideas about relationships. So I don't know how many people had heard of the film, but they didn't really need to.
Is it like a horror film?
Pardon?
Is it a horror film of its time?
It is a horror film. It's a Hammer horror film.
Oh, great. Brilliant.
But the horror is about this immortal woman. When she loses her immortality, she suddenly becomes very, very old very quickly and goes back to her 2,000-year-old kind of state, which is a skeleton. And that's the horror. The horror, more than mummies and throwing people down burning pits and all that kind of stuff. The horror is the beautiful woman deteriorating.
Mortality.
Yeah.
Wow, that is the thing we ignore all the time, isn't it? Hey.
Absolutely. It's kind of like seeing that as a child, and also it's about my sister growing up with a very beautiful sister. It's a study in jealousy, obsession, and revenge.
Oh right, okay, cool. Well, that's it. So 7:00 in the morning on.
7:00 in the morning. It's comedy, and it's a horror. It's comedy. Oh, it also features a stand-up appearance from the Colossal Squid.
Okay.
So I do have a moment of being a colossal squid doing stand-up.
Oh, great. So yeah, we did the gig at in the Fisheries Wharf Cafe, and you closed that gig, and I loved watching you. It was just so fun to watch you on stage, Charmian. You were you were just like such a warm, just a ball of energy up there, and it was like and I say you were like very just a happy clown, It was great.
Well, my background's in clowning, so I'm glad you said that. That's how I started. When I had an office job, I found myself going to clown school once a week just to meet new people. Thought I might meet a bloke or something.
Oh yeah.
In my 20s. But eventually I met my husband in my stand-up comedy audience. So it worked out in the end.
Because I've read your bio and it says, you went to Philippe Gaulier school and theatre de complicate.
Philippe Gaulier, he's like the really fashionable French clown that lots of really brilliant people have been to, and they go to study with him in Paris. I have to say that I studied with him in Deptford for a week. He came over and I did his week's course. But he's a very arrogant man.
Oh yeah.
And it was lots of money. And basically, every time it was my go to get up and try something, he'd just go mad. And the translator would say, Philippe says you are shit. Sit down.
I mean, that translator seems a little bit redundant there, isn't it? Oh wow, that's it. Just a double. So 2 people are calling you shit. That's just great. Thanks for that.
Absolute for 800 quid.
Oh wow. Oh god, you look a little bit clownish, like very clown-like anyway.
Oh good.
I mean, which is great. I mean, like that. But like when I went to this clown course, I saw all these people come in and they looked with before makeup like clowns, and I was like,
oh,
I don't look like any of these people. And I was like, okay. And then so when I was doing the stuff, I could feel that everyone was like, I know this guy's totally not getting it. This is the thing. You have to make a jumper become a dog, and it was like, this is just a jumper for me.
Oh, did you do lots? It sounds like you were quite keen.
I tried it. I wanted to see how far I could get with it, and it just for me, I'm too cerebral. It was like I just couldn't let go and get into that imaginary world. Maybe I could maybe give it more goes, but it was just for me. I just like to. I like the words.
I think that it's a very good place to learn to be on stage without really having very much and being happy to be there and to be playful with the audience. And I think that's a really good thing to get out of clowning. But after I did my clowning, I'd never heard of stand-up comedy. I mean, it was like Working Man's Club, Jim Davidson on the telly, but I didn't ever kind of see anything that was quite youthful or felt to me real or connected to me. I didn't really know very much about stand-up comedy, but we formed like a little clown troupe called Frantic Antics. And it was the days of the GLC, the London Council, and they were against Thatcher, so they spent lots of money to thwart her on the arts. So there were loads of clowning gigs, made so much money for a bit. But I wanted to get out of the script and talk and do more stuff. And I found that very frustrating. And I probably frustrated my other company members because I was meant to do juggling and acrobatics, and I was really crap at all that. And then when I first saw my first stand-up, which was so close at the time to storytelling, in the 80s, I just thought that's what I want to do. I really want to do that. I want to be able to talk, but have that connection that a clown has. Where you're in the moment,
projecting the joy into the audience of like what you're experiencing right now, isn't it? And connecting with everyone in the room.
Although having said that, in the new show I've done, I've kind of connected much more with my darker self. Well, I want to be dark and sophisticated, but it still comes out as really silly.
You can only be what you can be, is it? But I do think that all this sort of isolation and frustration at the moment is causing a lot of dark humor to evolve within time.
Definitely. And I just notice, there's so much activity from comedians on Facebook. I see some people really coming into their own and being funny in a dark way that I've never seen in their act. You think, bloody hell, when everything goes back to normal, that person's going to be a genius. Yeah. But I also think, I don't know if you find this, I've done so much overthinking. I can kind of connect with Robinson Crusoe, of just being so introspective. I've had so much self-doubt. Like I've got a gig this week, hopefully going ahead. Yeah. And I'm thinking, how can I go on stage? And who is that person who goes on stage and is funny? Because at the moment, I feel like a woman, in a house in Peckham.
Your identity's missing.
With a cup of tea. Wow.
Yeah. Whereas you feel like there's no momentum to your ambition, your drive. There's no drive.
No.
There's drive there. I mean, that's the wrong word, but it's like it's inert. It's just It's at a like the thing is, it's lovely when you've got like loads of gigs in your diary to go, right, I'm going to go do that, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that, right, I'm inspired to write new stuff, okay, it creates
and accelerate.
yeah,
And you're into a momentum
mm,
where you build up and build up. I've
exactly.
never had a break like this. Even when I had children, I was back on stage 2 weeks later.
Wow. Like, when was your first gig then, Charmian?
Well, the first one, I have had a couple. In fact, I went up to, as soon as the first lockdown softened and you're allowed to do stuff, I did an outdoor one up in Cheshire.
Mm,
I went all the way up just because I wanted to get on stage.
yeah.
I mean, I was paid, but not really enough to go to Cheshire.
Mm,
And so I've done a couple, but this one, it's after a long break. So much stuff was cancelled,
yeah.
earlier this last month. It is in Reading, and hopefully it's gonna, happen.
Like, your opinion on the lockdown and everything. Do you think that it's a hyperbole, or do you think that it's for sure a deadly serious thing that we should all continue to
Well,
bubble?
what I think is that this is a situation that no one really thoroughly understands, and so I waver between thinking it's like we're in a like Black Death situation, to we're in a kind of common cold, not common. Well,
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
some people are very. I think there's a lot of magical thinking going on, and I'm one of those people who's kind of like, well, of course, if I got anything, it would be very slight because I'm such a good person, or I eat my vegetables, and I think this magic, we have no idea. And I think that if we did have an idea, there'd be more kind of consistency in the way that different countries have handled it. And it seems to have not had that much impact. You talk about, we should have had an earlier lockdown. And you look at countries, like Italy, I think, and they had, terrible time, not as terrible as ours. And I think the difference with Italy is that they have their old people living in their community. And so they were able to see people being taken away in ambulances, attached to oxygen. And we shut most of ours away in old people's homes. And so we don't see it. And I don't know. I know people who, quite fit people who be very poorly. But I have to say, we're going into lockdown tier 3 on Wednesday.
Oh, right.
I personally, except people saying, I think I had it. Personally, within my circle, I don't know anyone who has. Lots of people obviously have. I don't know. And I'll be very interested to see what history makes of it. We're able to analyse the data.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, what gets me is the fact that, like, I mean, when has the government ever really cared about the people itself, really? Is it they don't really care about us that much? It's like, well,
No.
and it's like this, and then of course when they released the first vaccine, it was like, oh, Pfizer is, we've signed a waiver that if anyone has any bad reaction to this first was it the first shot, if you like, can't be sued. It's not our fault, we've rushed it.
And then the trouble with that, of course, is that normally they take years and years and years to be tested, but people don't want to have that time. And I think the general population has said, they want to take that risk. With the allergic thing, I mean, like, there are poisons and awful things in like most of this stuff, and I'm sure that there are loads of reactions. I'm a bit of an old hippie, I do I try and avoid having antibiotics and all that kind of stuff. My first resort would always be to take something homeopathic, even though I'm not absolutely sure that it's shit. I don't know. I think even if it's a placebo, it's somehow I'm informing my body, giving my body kind of like instructions.
Mind, body.
So I'm not really. And there are lots because I post middle age, and so as a child, there weren't lots of the things that they have now were not developed. So, for instance, I never, because of the timing, I never had a measles or MMR jab or anything like that, but I had the original one, the smallpox and diphtheria and all that. And so I've kind of, there's no stage in my life I thought I must have those things. Now I'm older. I've had a lot of childhood diseases. I seem to have muddled through, but I think that whatever, people think about that, with the MMR and all that stuff, is that we're used to those diseases. We've treated those illnesses when we've had them, whether you think they're, mild or severe. We've got kind of history. Whereas somewhere like South America, when the Spanish or whoever it was took measles to South America, they decimated everybody. And I think it's that unknown that sometimes, when I go through my extremes of thinking, yo-yoing between extremes, you think, well, supposing not that COVID was a biological weapon, but supposing they were like messing around with bats in the lab and, someone got infected and then it transmitted to something else. Those are things that human beings would not encounter in the wild. Maybe we're not able to cope with it. I don't know. I don't know.
It's just that's the thing, the fear of the unknown, isn't it? That, and I don't know, they're just harnessing it and locking us down. I don't know. I just always think there's something else going on that we just can't see.
Think of New Zealand, who have had that huge lockdown, but they can't have anybody coming to New Zealand until there's a vaccine. We could all have, I've got an antibody certificate. They're not going to let anybody in because they've had no exposure. And at the same time, they got rid of it. And every so often it pops up because viruses just go round and round and round. And sometimes I suppose they burn themselves out, like something like over the centuries, like, scarlet fever, which was a killer, but I think it's meant to be something very mild now. And so, how are we going to get the confidence? I don't know. It's a weird thing.
But the thing is, it's like trying to stop the sun rising. It's going to pop up. We're trying to fight nature, without being too cheesy.
If it's nature, but if it's not nature, I mean, if it was something that gave people terrible boils and blood coming out of their ears,
like Ebola or something,
we would react.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's why I think in Italy, that's what I was saying about in Italy, where they've seen it in their communities, in their villages. Their old grannies and everything. And it's really easy to get into a mentality of thinking, they're 80 or they're 90. They might be 80 or 90 and, have gone on and on and on forever. I don't know. Or not. Is this something that, are they the people that would have been knocked out by anything?
Yeah.
Or are they the people who are kind of immune to most stuff? And I think it'd be very interesting. I hope, I'm around in 20 years' time or whatever, when they have the answers, because and like with Spanish flu, I remember what happened with that. People did have to lock down and wear masks and stuff, and it killed loads of people.
Yeah, that's true.
At the same time as finding all a complete bore, I do find it absolutely fascinating, and I'm in a very touchwood lucky position in that my husband, he's just taken early retirement, but he up until now he's had a job. Haven't had to worry about not doing comedy. Financially, I haven't had to worry about it. So I know that I'm in a really privileged position there. And that means you think something's going on. What do you think is going on?
I just think, I don't know, I just think there's like, why is the government caring about us? And like just going, oh, well, look out, because really it's not in their interest really to, we're getting overpopulated. There's, we need to kind of, the environment is on the way out, really. It feels that we're losing the fight with that, and it doesn't. For me, it just I don't understand why the government would care about doesn't really care about the individual. It just is like, what's going on underneath all this sort of like fake caring about everybody. Oh, we care about you. No, they don't. They
I like that about. You're absolutely right, and I did suspect that, given a disease which takes out the economically unviable, that I think at the beginning maybe they were thinking this is a cull, but as soon as it went outside that public opinion, I suppose they had to act. But to me, the real crime is the carpetbagging that's been going on, giving contracts to totally unqualified people, with the PP, even with the distribution of the vaccine, it's like somebody up north has suddenly given one of his guys, he's turned him into the vaccine czar. I think, why not give the responsibility of that to people who know what they're doing and have been, organising programs like that for the last 100 years?
Have you managed to write a good COVID joke, Charmian?
Oh, I have actually. Well, one thing that's great is I do a new material Zoom thing with some other comedians every Monday, and I've been working on some of that today. It's actually because it's actually on my computer, which is under the Zoom. But I've been writing stuff about the stay station
Yeah.
the summer holidays that we were made to have in this country, and it
Oh yeah,
kind of
staycations.
blitz spirit.
Yeah.
But I feel that as I had a childhood in the 60s and 70s, I feel like a sleeper agent who's come into action.
Yeah.
I'm very experienced in this kind of hardship of being on the beach and shouting, put that shell down. It's
Yeah.
left over from World War II.
Rationing as well. Rationing toilet roll.
Rationing of avocados. Doing sexual favors for bog rolls.
And Charmian, how many shows have you written?
Full shows, I think about 12.
Wow.
The first one I ever did on my own in the Edinburgh was called Greyfriars Bobby Speaks to the World. And it was a stand-up show, and I took my then dog with me. He was just sat on stage licking his bollocks all the way through. But it was my favourite show, actually. The only thing is that, of course, it didn't occur to me that would attract children.
Wow, funny.
Because they'd think it was a children's show. It was at 9 o'clock at night, and I had to turn them all away.
Yeah. Like, I'm surprised. How did he lick he licked his balls for the entire, was it 15-minute show?
Well, 15 minutes. He'd lick them, or he'd then yawn, or he'd start whining to go out.
Oh, funny.
He used to just do whatever he wanted.
That's great. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
So your first show was your favourite show?
It was.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it was good fun. And at the time, I didn't realise how good it was and how moderately successful it was, in that lots of people came to see it, and it was at the Greyfriars Kirk House, and I only did 10 days. It was mad. I wish, afterwards I realised I should have done the 3 weeks. It was really good fun. And then I had my first baby like a year later, so I couldn't go back to Edinburgh for about 14 years.
So wow, that's a good break then. So you writing between that time as well? Or?
Yeah, I was doing stand up.
Yeah.
But I just couldn't go off for the whole summer. For the whole of August. And I had helpful grandparents and stuff like that. They were too young, and by the time they were about 12, I could do that a bit more. It was just too stressful.
Of course, that's it. In August, it's like everyone was going on holiday then as well, and it's it's the time.
And summer's fun. Summer is such fun. And then, of course, the last 10 years I've gone to Edinburgh, and I feel you spend the whole of August in a place where the temperature drops. It's often, overclouded and overcast. It's very you're moving yourself from the summer.
Yeah, it's true.
And it's quite strange this year to spend August in London, and we did go away a bit. We went to Norfolk.
Oh, nice.
We went visiting when we were allowed, and it was good fun.
It's weird, isn't it, having that month off? I mean, my birthday's in August as well, and it's weird to kind of like just be at home with the family on my birthday. It's just like, oh, this is nice. I'm having a barbecue. Okay, this is how other people live in August. Okay, it's good.
And you've got children.
I've got 2.
Yeah, I remember this. Yeah.
And one's 15 just gone, and the other one is 21 in January.
Wow.
Yeah. So. Fun times. And that's it. A couple more years, 3 more years.
Well, I've got all. You think that, but mine are all at home at the moment.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's it. But it's nice to have them around, isn't it?
22 and 24.
Oh wow.
One's partially home and the other's home. Especially nowadays, they can't afford to escape.
This is true. And so, what was your first joke you ever wrote, Charmian?
Oh, the first joke. I used to do visual jokes. And the first one as a clown that I did was I said I was going to do a bit of performance art. It was called My Orgasm, A Woman's Story. And I did a huge warm-up for it, humming and shaking my hands. And then I did a kind of mime thing with my eyes popping out. And then I brushed down the front of my clothes and said, "Oh, you bastard." You had to see it, really.
Yeah. You were clowning, and your first gig was for who? What was the? Where was that?
One of my first gigs was for the Tunnel Palladium at which was like a bare piece of a place.
That's a tunnel club, the famous tunnel.
The Tunnel Club, and I used to do open spots there. The first gigs I did were the Tunnel downstairs at the King's Head, which when it's open I compare a lot nowadays. The Banana, and there was a gig in Highgate called the Earth Exchange, which was a vegetarian restaurant. You got partially paid in food. That was very exciting.
Are you a vegetarian still?
I do eat fish. But I don't eat lobster.
But why?
Well, because I've decided that some lobster, when they're fished, I sound terribly privileged and waitressy here, saying that
That's what...
that that lobster, some of them are kind of like 70-year-old
Wow.
gentlemen,
Yeah.
and they're having like a family life down in the sea with
Yeah.
their grandchildren and being wise and intelligent, loyal
Yeah.
lobsters, and then somebody gets them in a basket,
Yeah.
and they're incredibly difficult to get meat out of. You need so many instruments, and what a waste of a life to die for that, to be nibbled at.
Yeah.
So no way,
That's
no more
fair.
lobster.
Okay.
Yeah,
Crayfish?
yeah, yeah, maybe.
So yeah, and you've written 12 shows. What was the one you were like, oh God, I hate this show? What is the one I really, or
uh,
dislike it? I wish I had never started this.
well, there I did a show. I think that what happens is you do a really good show
Mm-hmm.
that you love, and think, I'd love to do this show again, but I'm not allowed. I have to write a new show, which is ridiculous. You should be touring it and developing it. And so I did a show I really liked, and then I had to come up with something the next year. So I did a show called Soixante Mirth, which was when I turned 60. And that was a show I took to New Zealand. It was in Edinburgh. I took it to New Zealand, and then I took it back to Edinburgh, went to the stand, and I absolutely loved that show.
Yeah.
And then when New Zealand said, come back again, but with a new show, like that had to be written like very quickly, because Edinburgh finishes in August and you go to New Zealand in February. So I did a show called Bra Trek, and it sounds wonderful. The title was fantastic. I had the most wacky kind of Star Trekky kind of costume.
Oh, brilliant.
And I had bras, but it was about 3 different concepts in one show. I should have stuck to one idea. When I was on stage, I was getting bored and losing interest, but thinking, I've just got to keep going. I'll keep going. And I did kind of rewrite it on the hoof. But to correct it, I would have had to just do the whole thing from scratch. I didn't have time. There are lots of bits that I've got great jokes that I still use from it. They had such high concepts, and that's the trouble, because I'm a comedian. I'm a stand-up comic. I'm not a philosopher. And for some reason, I got possessed by this idea that I had all these great ideas that I had to inflict on my audience about fairy tales and how we're imprisoned by them. That's a whole show. And then bras, how we find the right one. And the thing is that loads of people came to see it because it had such a great title. When you hear that title, Bra Trek, you think somebody's going to be pissing around on stage. It's going to be like panto. And that's exactly what it should have been like. It was like War and Peace, and that's the one I like the least.
Oh, it rhymes as well.
Yeah.
Oh no, was it?
I could probably gut it and come out with 3 whole new things without trying very hard.
It sounds great though. It does really sound great. The imagery of that Bra Trek, brilliant.
Oh, the poster was amazing. When I went to New Zealand to do it, and it was really so I could, go on my holidays for money. That's getting something together so quickly. And I'd had all these great reviews in New Zealand. I think they were a bit kind of, what is she doing? But I discovered in New Zealand that there's a whole kind of 10-mile fence covered in bras in the middle of the wilderness, and no one knows how they got there.
Yeah.
And so they thought the show was going to be about that, and I'd never heard of it.
Oh, damn it.
And so I then had to write all that in. I mean, it was just very top heavy.
Nice.
I should go back to it.
That's great. Okay, with that show, what was you had to come back to it and rehash it. You got some stuff out of it. When you first started stand up, who did you kind of go, okay, I love that person on stage, and I would love to be like that?
When I first started doing stand up, there were lots of people who aren't around at the moment, who were really successful at the time, went on to do other things. And there were a couple of women, Kit Hollaback, and she started the Comedy Store Players, and I used to go to her workshops. She used to do improvisation workshops on a Saturday afternoon in the Comedy Store, and it was so amazing because you'd go to the old Comedy Store and there'd still be cigarettes in the ashtray from the midnight show the night before, and all of us were thinking, one day I would tread these boards. And she was really great. I mean, she was so slick and
Mm.
very American, because she was American,
Mm.
and we hadn't really seen anything like that. I loved her. Jenny LaCote, another woman, she was really good, and people like Jeremy Hardy, and Paul Merton.
Mm. Yeah.
They were all there when I first started. They were all very successful already,
Yeah.
and that was fantastic.
Amazing.
So, Bill Bailey, when he was in his double act, The Rubber Bishops, and of course he's doing so fantastically. Bloody hell!
Yeah.
Strictly Come Dancing. Have you been watching that?
No, not at all. Not at all. I don't watch any of that.
But he's like Margot Fontaine.
Right.
Out there doing the dancing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Wow. And so, like,
yes.
were you in a double act yourself, or was you just?
I have been in a few double acts. I was in an improvisation trio called the Pointless Sisters.
Oh yeah.
In the 90s, and we were very successful for what we were doing. Everybody wanted to book us. It was that dream, when your phone never stops ringing to do gigs. But if you do improvisation, or if you do a double act, you've got to accept the privilege of doing that. But psychologically, I was so immature, I think mentally at the time, all I could think of was, I'm not getting these kind of phone calls for my act. I'm not getting these, and you get jealous of yourself and competitive with yourself. And I was full of seething resentment for the success that I was having as an improvisation thing in the Pointless Sisters. And the thing is, we were all feeling it, all three of us.
Wow.
And the others were very good comedians, and it kind of exploded. We should have just. I've learned so much about. Taking opportunities, understanding the privilege of success, that it can be a really easy thing, and not to be suspicious of it when that happens. So I did another thing called Elven Bitch, which was with Hester from have you heard of the Ukulele Orchestra of Great Britain?
No.
They're very successful world touring ukulele orchestra, and Hester from it, we became friends. She's a fantastic musician, and we did this thing for fun called Elven Bitch, where we were elves who'd escaped from Lord of the Rings in order to do rock and roll. And I played the toy accordion and she played the ukulele, and it was like heavy rock. It was incredibly stupid. She was very, very busy with the ukulele orchestra. They were so successful that we couldn't really do that much stuff. Yeah. But like Glastonbury, who I get booked quite a lot by Glastonbury, but I always have to kind of beg them. But Elven Bitch, oh my God, they couldn't get enough of us. We, were comparing, we were doing sets. And one year we decided to do a different thing. We called ourselves the Panini Sisters. Yeah. We wore Victorian night dresses and false moustaches. Yeah. And we had no material, and we went down absolute storm.
Brilliant.
And it's the same thing, thinking this can't be very good because we haven't suffered enough to create it.
That's it.
But that was really good fun. But then Hester had a baby and she moved out of London. Oh. And then I did something else with Sheila Hyde, who was in the original Pointless Sisters. We did a kind of adult comedy show, but it was very clowny. That was really good fun. The trouble is, when you work with someone else, I find, is that you're not ready at the same time to do things. So the thing I did with Sheila, The Lost Resort, I was ready to take it to Edinburgh straight away. And she wasn't ready because, she was in a different position. She had a job, she had many more kind of stringent commitments. Whereas I kind of was like, didn't really have that. And that was I think that was quite a missed opportunity, because it was it was like we ran away to an island, we met King Kong, and we were 50-year-old women doing this. So I've done a bit of that, but I realised that with double acts, you've got to be reading from the same page in terms of what you want and your commitment, because it's incredibly frustrating. When I was rehearsing in the hours that my children were at primary school, and if other people aren't having to do that, they don't understand how incredibly precious that time is and how you want to use it as efficiently as possible. Yeah. And so I kind of felt quite pissed off, because I felt a lot of the time my time was being wasted. But it wasn't really, it was just different circumstances that I didn't have that much time. And also feeling you've got to go for things now when you're feeling it. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be more good. And I really believe that with shows and with comedy and with material, or if you're writing something for radio, is submit it while you're feeling enthusiastic.
Yeah.
Don't wait for it to be perfect. By the time it's perfect, it will be dead in the water.
That's right.
You
That's
can perfect it later. And I worked with one perfectionist and with one person who was, I'm a bit of a it'll do kind of person.
Yeah.
And somebody who was kind of a bit more like it'll do. And there's a compromise between the two. Perfectionism does not get you anywhere.
That's right. That's right.
I
You'll
don't
never
think
start.
so. Maybe that, but
No.
not that I've got anywhere. But I
No,
just think you have to, while you're feeling that creativity and that love, and you can sell it, do it. And that's one of the things I've learned about comedy is, if I watch a lot of comedy, I can see a comedian who's got much better jokes than another comedian.
Yeah.
But the other comedian will be much funnier because they've got that thing. You want to watch them. You want to know. You've invested some way in them personally, and that, again, being a perfect comedian, or having perfect jokes might not be as funny as imperfection. But I'm still trying to find all that out.
That's interesting. That's really, it's like, what I love is the fact that when you first, you were in your trio at the beginning, and like they were enjoying, and you all had felt the same thing. You weren't appreciated as an individual. I love that.
How stupid is that? And the other thing is, my now husband, when he was my boyfriend, he said he just couldn't believe how stupid I was sometimes. I used to compare the circus space that used to have these amazing cabarets, circusy cabarets, and it was absolutely packed out. And again, I think it's I had such a chip on my shoulder about my own work that I'd be kind of, well, it's not really stand up, is it? Comparing 800 people it's not really, is it? And then after one of the times I compared, a woman came up to me and she said, I'm a producer from Radio 1. Will you ring me up? I'd really love it if you'd write some stuff. We're thinking of doing, having comedy in between music and stuff, which they weren't doing at the time. And I took her card and I turned to Dave, my husband. I said, of course I'm not going to ring her, because I was too good for it. Or it was just radio. And of course, I didn't really believe that. I thought it was too good for me. I was scared that I'd write something for them and it would be rejected. And I can't believe that I never rang her up. And that's kind of madness. And that was like, well, I hadn't had any, that must be 25 years ago. And you just think, how thick can you be? And also how little self-knowledge I had at the time of not understanding stuff about my own fear, a fear of being rejected. Being rejected, a sign of somebody wanting you was a sign that they were just going to reject you more badly.
Yeah, well, that's God. We hate ourselves so much, don't we? Sometimes.
Oh my God!
Oh wow, God, it's a tough one, isn't it? But it takes a long time, isn't it? It's not quite. It wasn't quite as. I don't think it was quite as openly talked about of like the steps you can take to stop that from happening, and there's like a support and like
cognitive
books.
behaviour.
Thank
therapy,
you.
I think.
That's right.
You've got to hypnotise yourself.
Yeah.
And I think this lockdown's made me think about things that not just comedy, but everything, not with me and other people, about how we just get into the habit of believing ridiculous things and never being able to get out of it.
Yeah, the loops we can constantly do, constantly, hitting a wall of something. But I'm going to keep running at that wall. Eventually, I'm going to go through the wall. It's like, why am I hurting myself with that one wall? There's a door here. No, I don't want to go through that door. That door, that's too easy. That door.
Yeah.
I've got the key for that. I always get through that door. It's like, oh, it's so ridiculous, isn't it? And it's like, and then you're like trying to get more people. I know it's so ridiculous. Get more people to like you. Hey, what about the people that do like you already? Why don't you focus on those people? Yeah, no, but it's no. Yeah. I love Elvin Bitch as well. That is Elvin Bitch.
Yes, Elvin Bitch.
That is such a great name.
And it was like we had such a great, status relationship because Hester, Avon, Lady of the Door, she was high status, she was very elegant, and of course she could play really well. I was like her sidekick. And we had songs about the dark donkeys, and it was potentially brilliant, but needed a bit of work.
Great. That sounds great. But that on a poster, just I'm going to see that. That looks great.
Yes. Well, I'll send you a picture.
Please do.
I will.
You were nominated as well for Best Show at Buxton Fringe in 2016, right?
Yes.
Um, what is your thing? You have that on your poster as well, but there must have been a quote you pulled from that. What is it on your
It
poster?
was that show was my Soissons Mirth
Oh, Soissons
show.
Mirth, great.
Yeah, I love that show. That was when I turned 60, and the show was about meeting my younger self. I dug up lots of things. I found the novel I wrote when I was 10,
Oh, wow.
which was written in made up Chinese
Wow.
with illustrations. And, my younger self could accuse my present self of, having let her down, not fulfilled her dreams, not having a pony. That was the
Mm.
big one.
You gig a lot in New Zealand. Is that your favorite place to play?
Yes, I mean, I went originally in 2017, 17? I think so, 17,
Yeah.
17, 18, 19, that's it. Because I had some very good friends who were New Zealanders in London, and I'd never been. One of them asked me to her birthday party.
Mm.
Yeah, I thought ridiculous going to a birthday party in New Zealand. And then I thought, yeah, I'm gonna go.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go, and I'm gonna see if there are any gigs around. I think I'd applied for the New Zealand Comedy Festival before,
Yeah.
in a vague kind of way. So I just went. There were some very small, well, they're big for New Zealand, theatre fringes. So I got my show booked into 3 of them, and I went and did it. And that when I went afterwards, I just went to little tiny little clubs and stuff. But the first year, I kind of booked myself into their main alternative theatre space in Auckland and stuff. And they take it very seriously.
Yeah.
They take it, all the concepts that I was doing, they
Yeah.
take that seriously. It's quite a nice surprise
Great.
to have people listening to a show and kind of watching it so intensely, like you're giving them a great gift.
Appreciation. Do I find if I don't know this is just an observation I was saw about last few days, and I think comedy is the only job I think where they kind of go, you're an idiot in that country. Oh, we need a different kind of idiot in this country that we've never seen before. And I was like, I've been thinking about this for the last few days. And I was like, I just, of course, it's like the people from America, and they come over here and they might be just middling maybe in America, and they come over here and like, oh my God, you're such a different idiot to the idiots we've got here. Please get on stage.
I love that. Well, in New Zealand, they're much more, they want to have a kind of moral lesson and a story.
Great.
And that's great, because we've all got something like that to give. Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right. It's very interesting that.
It's such a, it's like, whoa, you're exotic, aren't you? I mean, not saying that, the show, I'm sure is amazing as well, but it's like you have a bit more cachet with the audience when you come from a different place.
Absolutely, and it's so far away. Have you been to Australia or New Zealand?
I haven't. My brother lives in Adelaide, but I haven't actually been yet. But that's one of the things I need to do. I've just been hammering at the fringes locally, to be honest. But I need to. That's one of the things I need to do for sure.
Yeah, with Melbourne, I haven't done my own show there. I've gone and done a comedy, done a set there, and I was so kind of anticipating what you said about they need a different kind of idiot, and I had that kind of stereotype of Australians. I thought maybe they wanted, lowest common denominator. But they didn't. They really kind of felt refreshed, and they were so
hungry,
kind of emotionally enjoying themselves.
Great.
It's great.
Oh, brilliant!
Because I've just literally been to Australia on the way back for a week at the most. And you think it's so far away, and it's such an amazing opportunity to go somewhere like that.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I did a bit of traveling like last year, just like in 2019. I was like, I just love traveling, going different places, and just seeing what works everywhere else. It's just so fun to see what they're hungry for out there, and just like then you feel like, okay, it's bulletproof. It does work there. It works here. Great. Okay. But yes. Yeah, that's definitely New Zealand. I'd love to apply in, and maybe next year. Mary Burke was saying I should go do it as well. I might just. It's gonna have to be done.
The first year that I went. We all did the Dunedin Festival, and we shared a flat. It was really good fun.
Great.
And then she went back she's been back about another 2 years running, and she's really goes down well in Auckland. But I think that all of us should go for the New Zealand Comedy Festival. That's what I want to go for. I won't be going anywhere this next year. Hopefully we get through all this. I'd like to go for the Comedy Festival. A bit later in the year, it's their autumn. What larks, eh?
You seem like pretty buoyant as a person, Charmian. Like, what do you do when you get stressed? What is the thing you do the most you like to get out of it?
I'm a terrible nail biter.
Okay.
Or rather a kind of picker. I've always done that. I've had to, it's kind of a lifetime habit I've been struggling with. When I don't really feel stress. I don't feel, I think because of my lifetime's motto of it'll do, I don't kind of, I haven't had like a deadline that's kind of not on my terms for a long time. But I get anxious, I get despondent, and I'll try and do something that gets me out of that, something comforting, like, watch something on the telly, take the dog for a walk, have a cup of tea, or just, I've got into swimming.
Oh, yeah.
Quite a lot recently. I'm not a strong swimmer, and I've always been quite scared of water. I didn't learn to swim till I was about 12, and I don't like to get my head wet. Right. So at the swimming pool, I never put my face in the water. I swim like a duck, or have my head up. Yeah. But I do. I mean, like I went this morning. The pool is only open. The pool I go to, because it belongs to a school, it shuts at 8:15. So I was in the pool at 20 to 8 this morning.
Fair play.
And I find that restores my spirits.
That's it. And you're also like, you've started the day. You've done that exercise out the way. You've fought, you fought one demon as well, That's great.
Yeah. Then I took the dog for a long walk. I think it makes a real difference to try and do something. One thing I did during lockdown too, it started quite accidentally, was I did a different outfit every day. And I photographed it, put it on Facebook, and then we turned it into a calendar.
Nice.
And it started with me just taking a photograph of something weird I was wearing because it didn't match. And I got so many comments. I then went and did a different character every day. So like I did a lot of people from the Crown. So I've got a Princess Margaret.
Great.
I've got the Queen. I've got a little waif, Victorian waif at her sewing machine.
Yeah.
I took more and more time on that every day throughout November, so it became quite obsessional. That really cheered me up.
I bet it's playful. It's just fun, you're playing in your life as well as your career. That's wonderful.
I can send you a downloadable version.
Oh, brilliant! I'll print it off and I'll put it up.
Do print it off. I've told people to print them. Lots of people ask for them. I think if you take it to a printer, it works out really expensive.
Oh yeah.
And I'm getting some done for my family, but I think if you could just print it off, I really enjoyed doing it.
Great. So you're the second person I've spoken to in the last 2 weeks that has also performed in a prison.
Was the other person Nick Wilty?
No, it was Matt Price.
Wow. Well, Nick Wilty and I performed at Wormwood Scrubs Prison on the lifers wing to people who were serving life. We did it through someone else who did drama in prison. She did, taught drama and organised operas and things. And so she got us to do the gig. And at the time, I think we had the Cardiff Three, who were afterwards exonerated, found innocent. They'd been serving 20 years or something. They were in our audience. And it was a very uplifting experience, except Nick Wilty noticed somebody in the audience he'd been at school with.
Oh, wow.
That kind of stopped him dead.
Yeah.
But that was really good fun. And then I once performed in the Houses of Parliament for the Women's Committee. The women MPs had their sort of club thing.
Yeah.
And I went and did it for them. And they stared. I think they would never go to stand-up comedy or anything. It was like a new culture form for them. So they kind of treated it like Shakespeare.
Yeah, they were just being very quiet and polite.
Well, they were very polite and they clapped and they did. That's something when people don't know if they're allowed. I know that sounds they don't know they're allowed to laugh, and there really are audiences who don't know how to respond if they're finding things funny. They think it's rude to make a noise, so they're very polite.
Do you do corporates as well?
I have done a few corporates, but I haven't been asked to. To be honest, I'd love to do some, but I haven't got an agent or anything. I've never had one.
I'd say you go down very well because you're just so playful and silly in any situation, really. You're just like, well, how can you not like you? It's
you're so sweet. I do get asked to do things like, in terms of corporate, things like Menopausal Woman Day.
Oh, my crowd, damn it.
And I think, surely I can be a bit more edgy than
Yeah,
that.
I've got jokes, guys. I know it's like we're talking about like we were saying before about how they liked you for your trio, and it's
Yeah.
like sometimes when it's going horribly because sometimes and they're laughing for the wrong reason,
Mm.
and you take it and it's not going as well as it could go, but you
Oh,
won't accept that laugh because it's not the laugh that you want.
absolutely. Oh, if they come up and say, "Is it real?
Yeah,
Is it?"
yeah,
And
that's it.
or they want to know, or then I think the interestingness of the situation has got above itself
Yeah.
because they should really only think about the joke
As
in
long
a
as they're
way.
laughing, isn't it? It's like should be able to just like surf that. Okay, you've got to
Yeah,
laugh. All right, here
yeah.
we go. And like,
I love that. I loved that place that we did that gig by the
yeah,
canal. Was it by a
that's right.
canal?
It's Fisheries Wharf Cafe. That's what it is. Yeah,
It
that's where
was
it is.
so lovely. It looked such an interesting
It's
place. I
lovely.
hope it survived.
Me too. Unfortunately, at the moment that we're not doing any gigs, but I just before the lockdown, I started another gig in Abbots Langley, and it is a theatre, and we tried to start up another one just before second lockdown, and it was a really lovely theatre space, and so hopefully those two will start up again when everything starts kind of
Yeah.
thawing.
Oh,
But
good.
yeah, I'd love to have you down, Charmian. They'd love you down there. There's such a
Love
great
to.
crowd. Um,
Do you live there?
not far from the fisheries, but 10 minutes
Oh.
from fisheries, which is a wonderful thing. It was a privilege to have that so close by.
And
Um,
are you about to go into lockdown 3 too?
I'm not sure. I'm not actually sure really, to be honest. I just it
Day
doesn't.
by day.
Yeah, it does. Joe, I'm not gonna lie to you. It doesn't really make that much difference to me, to
No,
be
it doesn't.
honest.
No, no.
Like if I'm inside, I'm inside. My life has been okay. Go to the shop. Okay, now I've got to wear a mask going to the shop. Okay, fine. I also have to wear clothes. That's not, it hasn't made much difference. And my wife works from home as well, so
Yeah,
we're so
hibernate and use it creatively for,
I'm writing
yeah,
new shows and trying to do little
yeah.
bits and bobs. I've been doing some comedy videos with a friend of mine, and we've made about 12 of them now, and
Where will I find that?
oh, they're not out yet. We're going to slowly
Oh,
start releasing them, but it's just
great.
I've been working on loads of different bits and bobs, but anyway, it's like that. But anyway, this is about you. I want one last question before
Yeah.
we finish up. Now, this might be just a self-explanatory in what we've talked about already, but I like to ask this question to every comic I speak to on stage. There's certain comics would present themselves, or they would describe themselves in a sort of way, like a trade of some kind.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I mean, this is a hard question, so don't take your time to
No,
answer
no,
it.
that's okay. Yeah.
It's just like I like, okay, for example, this is the example I give. Sean Mio describes himself as a gunslinger, a hired gun, right?
Yeah.
So as a comic, how would you describe yourself? As like a trade, or it could be any job, or just it could be
Mm.
even like an animal of some kind, or anything like a
Well, I might describe myself how one of my New Zealand reviews
mm,
described me as a mad auntie on acid.
great. Mad
Does that
anti on acid.
sound like,
That's brilliant. No,
yeah?
that is fine. That's great. I love it. I love that description. That's oh, it's wonderful. It's
Do you think that's good?
because
Because it's a very difficult thing to find a way of describing yourself. And I think for a comedian, if you can describe yourself very succinctly, and for audiences, if they can see someone and immediately peg them,
yeah,
know who they are.
that's right.
And that's when I was saying earlier, the difference between a comic who might have fantastic jokes
Yeah,
and one who connects with the audience,
yeah,
but might not, their jokes might not be so slick, is exactly that. But the audience want to know who you are. Well, I've been watching a lot of American comedy for the first time, quite intensely. I'm really learning that when you know who someone is, you give them a lot more time to explain themselves, and you trust them, and you go on the journey. You don't need to have joke, because you've agreed to go along for the ride. Do you know
yeah.
what I mean?
Absolutely. You've got the rapport set up just by
Yeah.
establishing who you are, isn't it? That's one of the hardest things.
So
And
you'll wait, and I can see that in a way, especially, I don't know if it's a British comic thing that we've learned, is that we want that kind of we want a response quite quickly to reassure ourselves. We'll look at it like an American comic. They'll pace themselves, like open their book, their book of their life, a lot more gradually, and let the audience come to them.
So
Yeah.
who's your favourite one that you've seen do that?
Oh, well, I'll take, because I've been working with, there's a director called Amanda Baker, and I did some work with her last year where she was, kind of pointing out these things. So, I mean, I couldn't say that it's a terrible thing for a comedian, but up until now, I haven't really immersed myself. But I've got a whole list of people.
Yeah.
I mean, I hadn't even, Maria Bamford.
Yeah, great.
I'm looking at my list. Louis C.K., Bill Burr.
Of course.
I had really, other than seeing 2 minutes of them, I watched a lot.
Yeah.
And it's the pacing and they're almost like lawyers, the way they kind of develop their argument. And it's kind of a different thing, really, but I really enjoy it.
That's it, and inspiring is that it's great for this lockdown.
It's an inspiring way of looking at our jokes, because another thing is when I analysed all my jokes, and lots of other people's, you think actually most of them could be defined as, up and till a while ago, of a surprise ending or a twist. And there are so many other ways of coming at things. And also, like American comedians, they won't leave a subject alone until they've really wrung everything out of it.
Yeah.
So lots to enjoy, and I kind of like trying to apply a bit more in my writing of my material to get more mileage out of each subject. Yeah,
that's it. Like rather than having bits, have like
like here's a funny bit, here's a funny bit, do you like this bit, do you like this bit, do you like me, do you like me, do you like me, which is
it diminishing returns, isn't it, in the end, isn't it? Like, oh, okay, that's it. Like how, because then because as you said, this might be just self-explanatory, it's like, the more you delve into one subject, the more they see who you are in looking at that subject, isn't it?
Absolutely. And that's something I'm just learning all these years later.
Interesting. That's great though. But hey, look, it's still, as I say, when I saw you, amazing, loved it, absolutely loved it, Charmian.
Fantastic.
What's the next step in Charmian Hughes' comedy career? What are you doing next?
Yeah.
What's next?
The next step.
Yeah.
Oh, what's my next step?
Yeah, your next step.
Well, I've got to go back to my last show to prepare it for New Zealand, and I'll probably do quite a lot of rewriting then, which is fantastic, because you don't normally have gone on to the next thing by now. So see what's going on, write some new material, which I've got my new material meeting in about half an hour actually. Right. So
okay,
I've got to type that up. Really, just to keep on going and to see stuff, watch stuff, learn stuff, and produce stuff, and to monitor, observe what I'm feeling and what other people are feeling all at these times, so that I know it sounds a bit kind of pretentious, but so I've got some truths, to share or to observe. Yeah,
that's it. The real you. Show them the real you. And what do you write sitcoms as well as that, and like other stuff?
Actually, we did when I was with Sheila. We did the Pointer Sisters, and we did the thing about being lost on a desert island. We did write a sitcom for radio.
Oh, right.
It was a time travel one.
Right, great.
And it did get quite far, but then somebody else came up with another time travel one.
Damn it.
So they couldn't have our time travel one. I loved our idea, which was I live in Peckham, Peckham Rye, which is meant to be one of the sites that's proposed as the last battlefield of Queen Boadicea. Queen Boadicea is having her last battle on Peckham Rye, and one of her female messenger people running to take a message for help falls down a wormhole and pops up in modern day Peckham and has to kind of live with somebody in a council flat.
Oh, right, okay. it's like you don't understand. So it's like that kind of like, you don't understand who I am.
Yeah,
I am the messenger. Young,
and she had dreadlocks because she was an IC9 and everyone else had dreadlocks. Yeah, It was quite good fun.
Cool. That sounds a lot of fun.
But they had some caveman thing going on. So
cool. That's nice.
If anybody's listening and wants us to develop that, just get in touch.
Great. And where can we find you, Charmian?
You can find me. I've got a Facebook page called Charmian Hughes Comedian. I'm at Charmian Hughes on Twitter, and I'm Charmian Hughes Comic on Instagram. And I kind of gone off my website because it's I need to do a new one, really. I'm trying to use more of the direct social media. That's where you can find me.
Well, Charmian, thank you for spending an hour with me talking about comedy and stuff.
I'm going to send you my calendar to print off.
Great. I will have that on my wall. I'm sure it will entertain me no end. I'll have
Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Absolute pleasure, Charmian.
A great pleasure.
And I will hope to speak to you very soon, and hope you get down for those gigs when they finally pop up again.
Lovely. Thanks so much.
Pleasure. And that was episode 88 with a very lovely and incredibly funny Charmian Hughes. I did get the electronic download of that calendar which Charmian made, and it was great. I have it, and I'll put a post on Instagram of July's date for this podcast as well. She put everything into it. It was really fun to just turn to the next month and just see her happy face, just doing some mental thing in the picture. But I'll put a post of that. It really did bring joy to my life. Now, you can find Charmian on all of the socials. She's there on Facebook as Charmian Hughes Comedian. Go and like her page. Go find her on Twitter as Charmian Hughes, at Charmian Hughes. It's spelled CharmianHughes. And she's on Instagram as Charmian Hughes Comic. And if you look, just follow on all the socials and see where she's playing next. She's an excellent comedian. You will not be disappointed. It's just such a brilliant to watch the way she infects the audience with joy. It's great, honestly. Go and see her. You will not be disappointed. And that was episode 88. And next month we have episode 89 with a very funny comedian from Brighton, Joe Foster. He's absolutely excellent. I've seen him at gigs. Just rip it up. He's just brilliant. So I've had an hour-long conversation talking to him for next month in August. If you like this podcast enough and you want to donate, just go to Patreon, type in The Comedy Defect Podcast, and donate as much or as little as you feel this podcast is worth. And if you can't donate, that's okay. Just tell your friends about your favourite episode, because it tells people where we are and what we're up to. You can follow me on Instagram. You can also follow me on Twitter. I'm there as @WinterDominus. That's Winter, DOMINUS. You can also find us on Facebook. We have a Comedy Defect Facebook page. So go and like that. And you can also join the Comedy Defect Facebook group, where all the podcasts will be uploaded for you to enjoy. But that's it for this episode. Episode 88 was with Charmian Hughes. Next month, we've got an incredibly inventive comedian, Joe Foster, for episode 89. Now, that's it. Enjoy the rest of your July, and I'll see you at the end of August.